So, Emily, what's on your radar?
Well, campuses may be on the precipice of reverting to the chaos of kangaroo courts. President Biden nominated Catherine Lhamon to fill the same Education Department post in which she served under President Obama. She's likely to be confirmed soon. That means it's likely the reformed Title IX guidance issued under Betsy DeVos will be scrapped in favor of the Obama directives. There are two troubling aspects of the policies Lhamon enforced during her previous stint, which was from 2013 to 2016. First, these guidances were issued via Dear Colleague letters, which bureaucrats use as a fun excuse to legislate. Second, they were deeply unjust and caused enormous suffering. This is not a controversial position. By the end of Obama's second term, the effects of the department's new guidance on Title IX as it pertained to sexual misconduct had been so disastrous on campuses, even progressive experts condemned them. Ruth Bader Ginsburg famously denounced them for, quote, not giving the accused person a fair opportunity to be heard. 2 years before Lhamon took the helm of Ed's Civil Rights Division, the department issued a Dear Colleague letter on Title IX. That was April of 2011. The guidance sought nobly to bolster the cause of women and everyone who suffered sexual harassment and assault on campuses, where sexual harassment and assault are very much a major problem. The guidance issued in 2011 and enforced adamantly by Lhamon were made federal funding contingent upon schools denying due process rights to accused students, denying cross-examinations, requiring the, quote, preponderance of evidence standard over, quote, clear and convincing or beyond a reasonable doubt standards, and defining sexual violence broadly to include rape, sexual assault, sexual battery, and sexual coercion, but without zero definitions. As Emily Yaffe noted in a critical three-part Atlantic series, quote, it also characterized sexually harassing behavior as any unwelcome conduct of a sexual nature, which could include remarks. Schools were told to investigate any reports of possible sexual misconduct, including those that came from a third party and those in which the alleged victim refused to cooperate, Yaffe added. So universities were thrust into chaos, scrambling to comply, then scrambling to deal with legal challenges brought by students denied due process. In 2016, according to BuzzFeed, quote, the average investigation had been open for 963 days, up from an average in 2010 of 289 days, Yaffe pointed out. Boston College professor R. Shep Melnick and Yale law professor Peter Schuck weighed in on Lamon's last stint at the department recently. Writing in Real Clear Education, they noted, quote, she redefined sexual harassment so broadly and with so few procedural rights for the accused that protests and lawsuits erupted from all sides of the political spectrum. She pressured schools to inflate their Title IX bureaucracies and adopt a single investigator model in which one person appointed by the school's Title IX office collects evidence and determines guilt or innocence with no hearing, no cross-examination of witnesses, and limited rights to appeal. The ACLU, they pointed out, denounced these truncated procedures, and scores of defendants, often supported by prominent legal experts, feminists, and civil libertarians, persuaded federal courts to reject them. So yeah, let's go back to that. The guidance enforced and defended by Lhamon was so bad, fully capturing the wide spectrum of bipartisan rebuke is an overwhelming task. But the Foundation for Individual Rights in Education, think of them as like an ACLU for higher education, put together a list back in 2018 that included critiques of the old rules and applause for the new ones, published everywhere from Slate to the New Republic to CNN. Even the Washington Post's editorial board published a defense of DeVos on this issue with the headline, Betsy DeVos's remarks on campus sex assault were right on target. Where was Lhamon? When even Betsy DeVos's most passionate critics were begrudgingly applauding her, what was Lhamon up to? Well, she was on Twitter, accusing DeVos of creating rules that made it permissible to rape and sexually harass students with impunity. Come on. The DeVos guidance, which unlike the Obama guidance went through the full public comment process, was pretty uncontroversial, again, even among her staunchest critics. As Fire wrote, these regulations added key protections to ensure a fair hearing for all parties, such as rights to a live hearing, to access all evidence in the institution's possession, including exculpatory evidence, to an unbiased decision maker, and to cross-examination through an advisor. They did not set back the cause of sexual misconduct victims. Indeed, by ensuring a fair process in compliance with their legal norms and due process rights, they did victims a great service by restoring credibility and taking these investigations out of kangaroo courts in a parallel legal system. Now, in her recent Senate hearing, Lhamon stood by her outrageous rendering of the DeVos-era protections as creating a climate where, again, she said, it's permissible to rape and sexually harass students with impunity. While Lhamon said she would enforce the law if confirmed, she also said, so when asked by Richard Burr, so even though the law says that it gives permission to rape and sexually harass with impunity, you would enforce that law? That's what Bill Cassidy asked her. Lhamon said, yeah. When questioned by Senator Burr, she wouldn't even commit to the presumption of innocence standard. Lamont's defense of her wild hyperbole, criticism of the new guidance, and highly dubious take on whether people accused of rape should be innocent until proven guilty, those are signs she's going to push the country's schools back into the Title IX chaos that inspired immense bipartisan backlash. It divided campuses, wasted precious education resources and tuition dollars, and more importantly, subjected students to grave miscarriages of justice. If Joe Biden were subjected to the very standards his own nominee enforced and defended, the Tara Reade allegations probably would have rendered a guilty verdict for him right away back in 2020. It's incredibly telling that even he nominated her after all of the backlash. This is not the single most pressing issue in America right now, but Lamon's confirmation means a lot of money and time and young people's futures could hang in the balance. Ryan, I have absolutely no idea what Biden is thinking with this pick. These protections that Betsy DeVos implemented went through the public comment process. They were pretty uncontroversial, as I said there, even being lauded by people on the far left. I don't understand exactly why Biden thought it was good to nominate one of the most powerful enforcers of those Title IX regulations during the Obama administration, when they were such a mess for campuses, such a mess for students, and resulted in so many sad case studies where people had these painful experiences litigating some of these most painful experiences of their lives in what essentially amounted to this like parallel legal system, kangaroo courts. It was really terrible. And the fact that he nominated someone who seems poised to take us back to there, I think is really disturbing.
Your point about Tara Reade is an interesting one, because if you go to a preponderance of evidence standard, and if you don't allow cross-examination or a hearing or the kind of due process that traditionally we associate with these types of situations, then you have Tara Reade with a number of people corroborating that she has been telling this story for years. Yep. By a preponderance of evidence standard, it seems pretty reasonable that the preponderance is on that side. What I often tell people who are thinking through these issues is two things. One, think about the Alex Morse situation. There was a Title IX investigation launched into Alex Morse, despite the fact that there was no accuser who came forward. Yeah. And there was no actual accusation that was made. You might say, how is that possible? In order to have a hearing and an investigation, don't you need something to investigate? Yeah. Like, doesn't some person have to make some claim? Nope. And it turns out no. And so if you then revert back to this happened under new guidelines, and so he would have been able to actually present evidence in his case. He ended up not participating because he told the board, look, if you actually have an allegation, bring it to me, and then we can talk about it. Right. And so ultimately they ended up clearing him. But under the old guidelines, preponderance of evidence, they had a number of college Democrats who were saying that they had heard that that nothing specific happened, but generally things had happened. And it's quite possible that would be enough, in a situation that isn't capturing national media attention. And then the other thing is that it may be survivors and victims who are hurt by this more. Absolutely, it is. Because justice does not move, in a linear step-by-step fashion. It swings in a pendulum, and everybody needs to understand that. And if you don't want the pendulum swinging all the way back to where it was before, where the entire culture, sides with the accused and dismisses the woman's allegation, then you're going to want to not allow bad faith actors to have high-profile cases of people being railroaded, because and that's where it winds up. So you're actually, I think, doing a disservice to survivors with this.
No, I think that's absolutely true. And if you review some of the cases that happened under the Obama administration, which, by the way, there's so many layers of awful here, like, let alone there's the injustices, there's the pain that it subjects very legitimate victims to, and then it's also the schools waste so much resources at a time when we kind of need to use our education resources, our precious education resources, with some efficiency. It sends these schools scrambling to assemble their bureaucracies in a way that falls in compliance with these Dear Colleague letters. I think Lhamon's instinct to use Dear Colleague letters and then enforce and defend them is bad enough. That's another one of these layers of awful. But to take the credibility out of the system, especially on college campuses where you are mixing this, just it's a weird time in kids' lives. And there's so many different motivations for why people do what. Broadening the definition of sexual misconduct, it creates so much confusion. Going to the preponderance standard creates so much confusion. It puts students in a terrible position. It puts victims in a terrible position where they're litigating these extremely painful situations in a way that can be exploited by very real perpetrators of sexual misconduct, because it's an unfair system. What do you think it says that Biden is going back to the same person who was enforcing these things, and she's essentially defending what she said about them?
You know, a lot of groups stood by Biden throughout the campaign, and particularly in the face of that allegation. He may feel that he owes them. He also may not have been that involved. Who knows what this president, what decisions come before him and what decisions are just made by the chief of staff or by somebody else. But yeah, I think that it is a fact that people who have always been hostile to the Me Too movement have been craving examples that they can point to of injustice, of railroading somebody who's accused of something unfairly, and innocent people getting their lives destroyed. They want those desperately, so that they can say that the entire edifice of Me Too was wrong-headed and we should just forget that whole awakening.
No, it's tragic what some people were put through during this administration. And by the way, this played out while I was in college. It was a huge issue on campuses. Like, it's actually hard to overstate how big of an issue this was on a lot of campuses. I mean, because they would get wrapped up in these case studies that were horrific, or maybe they were exceptional to what happens, and they weren't representative of what happens in a lot of these cases, and so they totally distorted the conversation. It was really, really a painful time on campuses. So this is flying under people's radar. This is not getting talked about a lot. And like I say, this is not the most pressing issue in America right now. But it does leave a lot of kids' futures in the balance. It will mean a lot of pain and misery if she is confirmed, and she does then double down on these standards. We'll see. There was a lot of satisfaction with the DeVos standards on a bipartisan basis. I don't think they were perfect, but there was a lot of satisfaction in it. So maybe she ends up just kind of leaving them based on her statements. I highly doubt that's going to happen. Hopefully it does, but we'll see. And on that note, Ryan, I am looking forward to what's on your radar next.
All right.